Noel Norvell. Robert Franks. Jason Dunbar.
Here.
Brewster Knott. Elizabeth George.
Here.
Robert Washington.
Present.
Ed Rebholz. Bill Walker.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Last month was to suggest that anybody would have read all the minutes from last month. It was a long, complicated, I thought a very productive meeting. We'll address some of that a little later. Anybody have any issues, thoughts, comments with respect to the minutes from last meeting? Anybody?
They weren't published online. I didn't see them on the MAB post though.
So I published them you're saying,
So when you go to Fort Lauderdale,
oh, no,
the website,
the minutes wouldn't be posted until after tonight, once they're approved.
okay, then I don't know where to get the minutes then.
It was sent to you.
In the agenda, so
Okay.
we would have had the complete agenda.
In
Okay.
the email that I sent out a week ago.
Got it. Sorry. Okay, now I know.
Oh, don't be silly, don't be silly. So we'll send the agenda around a couple times, just the basic agenda, but Andrew sends it with complete detail, and that's all the backup. So that's generally the first time around. Don't hesitate to reach out if you didn't get it. So may I have a motion, please, to
Motion to
approve?
approve.
Elizabeth George, a second from anybody?
Second.
Second, and may we have everybody in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Anybody opposed? That's all set. We have, before we move on, well, let's take waterway crime and boating safety, please. We do not have Marco Aguilera, who is here, who's supposed to be here to report on code compliance, but we do have the main man, Sergeant O'Neill. Sergeant O'Neill, tell us about the past month, fairly active month, obviously. It's hard to believe a month has gone by. It seems like it's been forever. So-
Yeah, me too. The month of May, the Florida Police Marine Unit, we responded to 186 calls for service. Of those calls for service, 8 were vessel crashes with no significant injuries, and 1 vessel fire, which they believe was caused by a cigarette, but I haven't gotten an update on that. I also want to share that the air show went really good. It was very nice out, but we had no real issues at all. We actually probably had a few boats less, police boats there than I would usually have, but still everybody did a great job, and it was really good.
Yeah,
Really good year this
terrific
year.
weather.
Yeah, great weather, so there's a lot of boats. So we usually, after the show, we'll come into the inlet and sit there and kind of slow everybody down. I didn't think those boats were gonna stop coming. I was like, man, there's gotta be 1,000 boats coming.
You guys
to this
did a
inlet.
great job with that because we went by.
Yeah, that was real work there.
Yeah.
That
We worked
45
that,
minutes.
sir.
There was real work. Something I also want to share with you guys, our agency, along with FWC, Coast Guard, BSO, and Hollywood, we participated in the Memorial Day weekend operation called Not This Weekend. That was really started by myself and Matt Gielli, who's the sergeant of the BSO Marine Unit. And we try to get everybody in the county on board to try to just like this countywide, just a real visibility more than anything. I think it went really, really well. I thought it was very productive, and getting all of us from federal to state to local county, all of us working together at once was really good. And I'll share with you the stats for it. FWC got 20 resource violations. There's 1 BUI. There was 1 warrant arrest, and the Coast Guard shut down 3 illegal charters. There were over 200 stops made and over 200 citations written. 4 more criminal, 15 are civil, and a ton of warnings and a ton of like no fishing licenses and that kind of stuff. We also had 1 medical emergency. Someone who was probably been drinking too much dove in at the sandbar, which, is not very deep, and luckily wasn't paralyzed like last year, but he had a significant cut to his head. One of my guys scooped him up and just took him to the doc to get medical treatment. Also, there's a migrant landing in Hillsborough Beach during that time, mostly Dominicans, and there was 9 of them on board, and 6 of them were recovered. So it was a really good even without all the stats, it was really good for all of us to kind of intermingle. My agency and BSO, we were on each other's boats and that kind of stuff to really get to know each other a little better. And so I thought it was a really good weekend, and I think it was real positive, and I think it really had a good impact on the county for that weekend.
So FEC drawbridge, that obviously caused you some problems as well for a while.
Yeah, that was stuck down for a while, yeah. I mean, it was more problem for everybody else than us. I mean, if the only problem we would have is if we got an emergency call back there, then we'd probably have to take our small boat on a trailer and take it over to Cooley's and launch it, you know, and then go from there.
There was a point you mentioned quite some time ago that you could not have a situation where the bridge was down and you didn't have a cop up the other side of the river. So that is something you're addressing.
Yeah, that's something with our staffing, because if the drawbridge is down, and then so if I have a call that I have to send somebody west the bridge, I have to send 2 officers to that call no matter what it is, because if that guy needs backup, then I got no backup for him if the road units can't help him. So the bridge is down, so we have to really kind of play logistical, you know, with that. If it was something like stuck down like that, then we probably would just our small boats on a trailer all the time. We would just grab it and take it to Cooley's and dump it real quick.
So a couple other things real quickly. On Steve Glassman's pre-agenda call the other evening, I know Elizabeth was on that as well. Somebody mentioned that difficulty reaching FLP or code compliance, et cetera. There was an issue, and somebody said, I don't know who to call. I don't know who to call police. I don't know. They didn't even know code compliance existed. But I don't know what the answer is other than perhaps some signage around the waterway that says if you're in trouble, there's a number. But folks literally are on this call, don't know who to reach out. I know we're not going to resolve it. It's something we all
I mean, 911, you know, non-emergency number, you know.
we just have to make it more visible. I'm going to leave you with one other thing, and I'm going to toss this to our dear friend Barry. There's 2 there to explain this. We've seen a number of situations where folks feel it's okay to sand, paint, prep boats in the waterways. There's a photo that Barry got the other day of a large azimut, I believe it is. That's perfectly okay to sand, etc. I believe Sergeant O'Neill's aware of this. It's an ongoing issue, guys. So I kind of think it's the type of thing that, you know, if you see it, you got to say it. So that's simply not acceptable. Any comments, thoughts? You were obviously.
Yeah, so, you know, Barry reached out to me with it. I sent an officer, this kind of call I can certainly help with. It's more of a code enforcement thing than their warehouse and mine. I can't enforce it. We tried getting a hold of code enforcement and try to get them to come out. I don't think they had anybody working on the boat that day. Right. So I sent a officer as soon as I could. When the officer got there initially, they weren't doing any work on the vessel at all. He talked to the captain and told him, hey, this is what the ordinance says. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. And then he sent me that picture. I immediately sent, I didn't wait for cover. I immediately sent an officer back there. Fortunately, he got there again, you know, because we weren't on the north end of the city, we're on the south end of the city. They weren't doing the work again. Something like this, we would have to see in person for us to charge somebody with. We can't just go by a photo of it. If it was a felony, then we could, that's the different thing. But with a misdemeanor, that's occurring in our presence for us to report something like that. He again made contact with the captain again, the guy running the crew. We also conducted a report, sent that to code enforcement as well as our own environmental detectives.
I just think it's the type of thing, again, that, you know, when folks said, you know, they don't know who to call if there's a accident or issue. This is similarly something where we have to make sure that we let folks know this is something they do need to report. I appreciate that. Yeah, please.
I didn't expect this was going to be brought up tonight, but when you see something like that and it's reported to you, as this was to me, you call code, and I don't believe that we should be giving our phone and names out. It's a function of this board's duty, I think, operating within the guidelines of the chapter that we work under. And to put our name out that we're the one complaining takes the burden away from the people who are violating. And I think it's up to the board to decide whether they think that's proper or not. I personally don't think we should have to surrender our name. It's not like they're, encroaching 2 feet into, this started because the boat's too big for the canal. That was what to my attention. Then the second phone call was, this guy's painting his boat down there. So when I called, they wanted the phone number and name, and I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel that's right.
Per my understanding is that's a requirement for all code compliance
Yeah.
items that you
Yeah.
must identify the person reporting. You can't, it doesn't have to be made public, but it does have to be reported.
Even
That's
Well,
the
that was
requirement.
Even when you use
That
that
was
fix it app.
changed to.
Yeah, when the Fix It app, you don't have to, it doesn't show on the Fix It, it'll say neighbor.
Say neighbor.
If that's how you want to have it set up, but you have to, but that's been a code compliance requirement and. I mean, maybe, I don't know if you know, but I know
Norbert.
that was brought up
It
a
was
number of
changed.
times
Used to be anonymous for acceptance.
and that was a
Yeah.
problem that there were the number of reports that were false and causing bigger issues. I know that was brought up at our, HOA in our area. Our code compliance person told us that was changed a couple of years ago, I
Right.
believe.
I'm aware of it.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Sergeant, I had an incident happen and I had the Florida Marine Patrol come up when I had my barge and stuff. I'm working over Riviera Isles. And the sergeant and the 2 officers told me that I had to move the barge because I did not have a permit for the dock that I was building. Now, what I'm saying is, I asked the police officer at the time, I said, isn't this a code thing to start with, number one? And he said, code had called you guys and said that apparently they had to enforce this and stuff. And I can even tell you exactly where it is. And I said, I do have a permit for this. It's on the other side of the house. I said, this property is 3 lots long, all right? And the permit and everything else, I said, this dock is $700,000 and stuff over there. I'm sure it's that they got a permit. What happened is he says, fine, go get the permit. This is the sergeant now, not code. And this is the question I want to say. Do you guys enforce if the violation, if somebody calls code and says, I think these people don't have it, you enforce it? Because when I went around the other side, long story short, the owner had left and put the box with the permit stuff inside his garage. We didn't have it. So long story short, I had to get one from my office that came down there. What the problem was is the homeowner had unity of title with 3 different properties, pulled the permit on the other property, which is allowed because otherwise you'd have to get a permit for the kitchen and everything else and stuff. So you can pull a permit on the unity of title. The officers were happy when I showed them that. The point that I was trying to get across is on even this violation, if there's a code violation and stuff over there, does code get a hold of you to go enforce that? How does that come with that? In other words,
Not normal,
not normal.
not normal.
So
That kind of thing, like permitting, zoning, stuff like that, that's something, if it's in, if it's against the ordinances, the police officers can enforce it. I don't like to make it a habit of that because we are not the subject matter experts with those rules. The code enforcement people are. I mean, like, I don't want them out there enforcing criminal law. I mean, they can't even, you know what I'm saying? Like now we can, and if they're just completely not available, what I would normally do is I'll send an officer to go there and see what's going on. And a lot of times it's something easy, like, yeah, I do have a permit. Like someone calls, oh, this guy's have a permit for this work. Show up, yeah, here's my permit. Okay, good to go. That way we don't. If not, I will try to get a hold of someone at code enforcement to respond to take care of it. Because I don't, it's not really that's not really it's not really our job to do that kind of thing. We intermingle a lot because of the availability of us on the waterway with them on the waterway.
the biggest problem I'm saying is in relation to this. Barge pulls up to a house and stuff over there. And the Marine Patrol comes over and says, you gotta move the barge because you can't load and unload equipment at this property.
Right.
Okay. Now, whose violation is that? Is that yours or is that also a code violation? That's what the point I'm trying to get across is you enforce that.
It's an ordinance that code can enforce, but I can enforce just about any ordinance as well. Code can't enforce like a guy with the open beer ordinance, but you know, we can enforce almost any city ordinance, but that's code's purview because they are more trained on those kind of violations than the police are. If this was like, the only reason the Marine unit even really gets involved is because our availability. If this was a code enforcement kind of thing that happened where they would send a street cop, they wouldn't even send the street cop to it at all. They would say, refer that to code enforcement, unless something was dangerous happening. Other than that, they wouldn't say the only reason because of our availability versus code's availability on the water.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is she should know that more than anybody else, because a lot of places, she has an ideal place to load and unload barges. She is. We come over there and stuff over there. Now I don't know whether they call you or they call code enforcement, but Marine Patrol comes over and tells you or gives you the fine for that barge. So I don't know who they call, but that's a violation and stuff over there. And that's the point I was trying to get across. I think what Barry was saying is the enforcement is yours, but they're in violation of, let's say the code because they don't have a permit for that. Other than if it's a city run job, then for some reason or other, it goes one of these numbers and stuff over there, you're allowed to do that. But the thing of it is they call and they'll say there's a barge on our easement and stuff over there. Who enforces that is
It's
you
code,
guys.
it's code. I tried to get involved with that. The only way I'm gonna get involved with a barge is if it's like a hazard of navigation or something along those lines. Something that's a state statute. For that kind of stuff, I'm gonna let code handle that stuff.
Thank you. All set. So let me talk about the rest of the agenda real quickly. We have a dock waiver at 1947 Northeast 21st Street. The dock permit at 601 Cordova Road has been pulled, and we have a dock waiver at 700 Southwest 4th Place that we have some familiarity with. So we don't have a long agenda. I'm going to take a moment, if I can, to address what I refer to as the elephant in the room. If everybody notices, we don't see moratorium and reimagining and all that. So if you all hadn't heard, obviously you were informed that the moratorium got shot down at the city commission meeting on May 7th. In spite of the fact that we had a first reading, we got knocked out. Bob Dunkel came, I was there, Andrew was there, and Barry was there till he didn't feel well and decided to leave before 1:30 in the morning when we finally got around to us. So they got to us around 1 o'clock in the morning. Basically, we started where John Herbst recommended that we shorten the 12-month moratorium period to 9 months. Then it was recommended, I think it was Sturman who said we should shorten it to 6 months. And this conversation went back and forth. And at that point, we were fully prepared to accept a shorter time frame. But there was, again, some craziness going on amongst the people that joined, and this will give you some idea what happened here. And then at a point, Dean Trantola says, how about no moratorium? At which point, people in the audience who were there to support the opposition to the moratorium applauded, and Dean Trantola held his hand up and said, Trantola 2024. To me, it was one of the most disrespectful things that has ever happened in my business life. We spent 2 years on this, easily a year and a half, with P&Z meetings, endless meetings, etc., to simply be told no more. So it is what it is. I will tell you that we had reached out to MIASF the morning of and said, we are anticipating headwinds and we can use some bench strength. Nobody from MIASF was there. We have one of the biggest supporters of all in the room, and that is John Kelly from Bradford Marine. John was unable to make it and a huge supporter. John, unfortunately, we got a message from Courtney Day that morning, and it said, Steve, it seems that everybody thinks it's 100% stop on any new docks and pilings. They don't understand it's just for special requests pertaining to waivers for docks, pilings, seawalls, etc. So this is where we are. None of us are quitters. We're here and we're going to fight this battle. And whether or not we fight the battle on the moratorium or clean water or anything else, we're continue to do the best we can. I personally will not invest the amount of time to be slapped around and told none of this is going forward. My time is too precious at 74 years old, Andrew, and certainly Bob Doble. So we're going to continue functioning as an effective MAB, but we have to kind of rethink where we're going with this. So where do we go from here? I don't know where we go with the moratorium. I don't know where we go with clean water. I know that John Kelly, if he wishes to speak, obviously is working with other large marine operators who have vulnerability up there. So the answer is we're not done with this, but for right now, it's tabled. Bill, I don't know if you have any comments. John, if you want to make any comments, but the answer is that we did everything we possibly could. We summed up, as we showed you last time, what exactly the moratorium is, how important it was, the economic driver. The big takeaway, and I've shared this with John and others, in my best French, the town, it's not the town. The majority of people who live in this community care less about mega yachts, and that's the dilemma. What they don't understand is the guy who owns a sandwich shop up there, his whole business depends on that. So there's so many folks that are affected by this that the possibility of losing this business is just unthinkable. So I don't have an answer. It's just something we're going to table for a while and we'll readdress it. But simply shutting that off is not the answer. That's all I do.
Steve, a couple things.
Please.
There's gonna be, the city's got funds, and I don't know exactly where it stands right at the moment, but the bathymetric survey is gonna continue. And that's a big deal in terms of like, okay, what is the center of this river and where are the high spots and the low spots, you know? And, you know, with that continuing, you know, we still have a collective group to review and discuss waivers. And certainly this is a very interesting little flyer that gets sent out to, you know, but, so.
Look, you know what?
It's a.
I would have done the same thing. If I was vehemently opposed to something, I would do everything I can. The problem is the opposition is completely unfounded. John, did you ever handle it?
No, I think all I would say is that it's very clear that there's a lot of misinformation. It's a lot of disinformation. You look at something like that flyer, and unfortunately, it's not simply relegated to this one issue. There's a whole host of issues in the local politics, state politics, national politics that get back to those kinds of flyers because people don't have the real facts. I think, look, the issue is it's not about I like mega yachts or I don't like mega yachts as an individual. It's a question of what does this community, where does this community's economic well-being come from? That's a fundamental issue that I don't know that very many people fully appreciate or understand. It doesn't have everything to do with just beaches. There's a reason why this community is called what it is, the yachting capital of the world. You can take your boat of any size to pretty much any locale in Florida, and there's going to be a nice marina, and there's going to be a nice beach. What differentiates Fort Lauderdale and Broward County is that it has a very significant services component that has grown up over decades. And it grew up in an area west of downtown on the New River for a very specific reason. Number one, back in the day, there wasn't a whole lot out there except fields and marsh and mangrove. but it was also extremely important from the standpoint of being protected by storms. In any given storm, what does a boat traditionally do? It runs to what's called a hurricane hole. It runs into a location that is better protected primarily from one thing, which is storm surge. It's the increase in water depth that has the most impact, damage on boats. That's what occurs on the New River, where all of the service facilities happen to be. They are inland, some 4 miles or so, by virtue of the fact that there is less surge that can occur up there than there is when you're down at the intercoastal. So that's where all these businesses have grown up. That's where the yachts and boats, it's not all yachts. We service boats that are 30 feet, 40 feet. There are many people that don't like boating. That's their prerogative. You know, somebody may not like golfing. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't allow golf courses to be built here or there. In this industry's particular case, it's a big reason why people will move to Fort Lauderdale and other communities in Broward County. It's simply because it is a boating capital. It is a yachting capital, but it's that because you can get your boat serviced. And the problem with the dock issues, and you know, we all know it, it takes one dock where a waiver is provided inappropriately that restricts the river. You talked about it at a prior meeting. It's like the arteries to your heart. You allow the clot to develop, the boats can't get up there, at which point that industry goes away. If you can't get boats there, then they're gonna, you know, the business is gonna develop someplace else. And many might say, well, who cares? I personally believe that it's a big impact, and it's something that MISF will need to continue to spend time on, explaining to the community at large, the city commissioners and so forth, what that real economic impact is, because it's well beyond the boat show. It's all of the industry that surrounds us. There are hundreds of businesses in Broward County that work on these boats. We need to get better facts out there.
Thank you very much. It's very much so. You know, we're not done in the sense that we understand whether it's the yachting capital, the Venice, United States, et cetera. What it really comes down to is so many of the residents in this community depend on the industry for their livelihood. There's many of us around us who are charter boat captains, et cetera. So we're not done in the sense that I know, as Bill said, they're working on it, other folks are working on it, John is working with other large yacht owner yards, et cetera. So it's not done. What we did is get our ass handed to us, and we learned from it. We understand that we have to do a better job, not just educating the citizens, but the 5 commissioners. It's quite clear. Thank you, John. Anybody else want to share anything?
There's 140,000 marine jobs in Broward County. 2 million people live in Broward County. Probably a million.
Well-paid jobs.
Well paid.
And then look, and Barry will get to you in a second, and John's made the point earlier, as other folks have said, what does it cost every time one of those big yachts goes up the river? The amount of money that's generated to the community, and unfortunately, again, it's just not making its way to the commissioners to understand. So we'll do a different job, we'll do a better job, but for right now, go ahead, Barry, please.
We need to be mindful that the boat owner, captain, pays a premium to come up the river.
Yeah.
They're towed up there. I think it's $1,500 is about the average tow. They don't have to get a tow to go to Dania. They don't need a tow to go to Palm Beach or on up to St. Lucie. They'll get the boats repaired somewhere, but if it becomes more difficult, not necessarily blocking it off altogether, but if it becomes more difficult to navigate the river, they'll simply go somewhere else. You know, these big boats don't tend well with scratches and scrapes down the side, and that's what I'm fearful of, is that they're still going to get the work done, but it may not be here.
Well, they are developing more yards up in like Fort Pierce per se, or et cetera. So, yeah, like you said,
They're targeting it. They're
Yeah.
going after this
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And there's nothing
They
easier to
don't need
move
to be
than a boat.
towed into those yards. See,
yeah, exactly.
Right.
there's a reason that they want to be towed up because of the quality of the work and the availability of what parts are around here when they're needed. That's a major thing. That Marina
Contractors driving
Mile
2
down
hours.
behind Lester's, that's just a, you know, that's not up in Port St. Lucie and other places. Yeah.
Look, it's a huge part of what Fort Lauderdale is. So again, we know that folks like John Kelly, Bill Walker, folks like that who are involved in the marine industry are working. So we're here to support you everywhere we possibly can, and we will stay in touch. Getting on the business side, we have, excuse me. We do have a dock waiver at 1947 Northeast 21st Street. I'd like to introduce Lisa McConnell, who is presenting. Lisa, where are you? Lisa said, Andrew said, I'm not supposed to say Lisa's completely new, but she's new to the presentation side of this. So we're all going to be very supportive and help her, and you've got the floor, please.
So I have the presentation that's there on the screen. I am Lisa, representing our client Christopher Place. The address we just discussed at 1947 Northeast 21st Street. Christopher lives on a stretch of the Middle River that has very expansive water, over 200 feet, and is simply looking to extend past the 25-foot limitation for a pier and boat lift to be constructed. And the waiver is for approximately 14 feet based upon the radius of his property line past the 25 feet. If you move on to the next slide, please, you'll see a couple of pictures looking off of the existing rear of the property across the waterway here. So many of the adjacent canal areas might be 80 feet, 90 feet. Again, this is well in excess of 200 feet. Go to the next slide, please. You can see on the waterway and the big open water to the left side of the waterway, that's an illustration to scale of the proposed pier and boat lift on the water. Clearly not an obstruction of the navigation there, well within the 30% rule. Mr. Place's vessel, LOA 32 feet. It's 28-foot axopar that he will put on this boat lift that is also with access by the adjacent pier to it. The next slide shows our proposed structural plans. These have been approved by all of the environmental agencies, submitted to Fort Lauderdale for building review and approval, and obviously requiring the approval of this waiver of limitations based upon the length here and distance out on the boat lift. As we just discussed with severe weather events and the need for wind protection and things, especially on that large body of water running on the northeast, the protection of his vessel is the main, reason why we would request that this be approved. Again, the location of his property and the riparian rights of water out off of his property, definitely no navigational concerns whatsoever. And then in addition, Mr. Place took the time to speak to all of his neighbors in friendly manner and requested that they be aware of his dock waiver he was interested in doing. And I submitted with the application of a load of voluntary signed letters of consent by all of the neighbors, understanding that this is certainly, like I said, something that's in an effort to protect a vessel and not a navigational burden. So are there any questions?
So first of all, the presentation is very well done. The package is terrific. Reasonable request, excellent submission. I have never seen so many letters of support. Andrew, are there any letters of objection? Anybody opposed?
No, I noticed all properties within 300 feet and I did not hear back from anyone.
So excellent job, by the
Thank
way.
you.
I throw this out to the board. Any questions, concerns, relatively straightforward. Any issues anybody has? Okay. Anybody like to make a motion, please?
Yeah, motion to approve.
Second.
Who's
We
the
have a-
second? Who's the second?
We're there.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, as Barry just mentioned, have you seen the location? It's a beautiful spot, by the way. It's a protected area there, absolutely beautiful location, and, there really is no issue with, boats in the area. If we can, please.
Yeah, I'll do a roll call vote. Barry Flanagan,
Yes.
Norbert McLaughlin,
Yes.
John Lynch,
Yes.
Jason Dunbar,
Yes.
Elizabeth Jordan,
Yes.
Robert Washington,
Yes.
Bill Walker,
Yes.
Chair Whitten.
Approved.
That's eight to zero unanimous.
Squeak by.
So, great job, congratulations.
Thank you.
Best of luck. there, so. That brings us to, I'm sorry? That brings us to a subject that I have wanted to mention for the longest time. We have a dock waiver at 700 Southwest Fourth Place. I believe this is Chappelle Group is presenting. And I was joking a little bit, but you guys understand, this is the property in Sailboat Bend. The doctors Myers are kind enough to join us. Aaron, I'm pretty sure, could do this presentation at the point. But they got sidelined as a result of the waiver. So if there is something positive coming out of the dismissal of that whole thing, this would be one of them. So you got the floor, Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Others published over 714 East McNabb. I have Taylor Goskowski with me as well. With handouts for the presentation. Like the chair said, it's accepted from the Southwest Forest Ways, graduating class to the Yemming program, the city property. It's having the arts to right. Split river. It's just an aerial blow up of the property station. That's that. It's visible. That's more close up on street of the property is heavily vegetated, so it's hard to see the house. But 16 dock and piles here with the foliage. This is a shot I took on Saturday. You can see the dock is dilapidated, it's fallen in. We are, in the process of going through the environmentals and existing pile clusters. Then to the right, the first slip in the city to the down to the west of that is the existing properties. This is existing conditions showing the existing T-Dot. The location of the island that failed is about here. And then there's two pile clusters out here. These properties along this section of the river should be on the north side of the river. It's old flat. So property lines are actually interior of existing seawalls on most of these properties. So we are here for a waiver for the dock, but if it was at the seawall like most properties, we wouldn't be requesting a waiver for the dock. We would be for the still for the piles. But we've got it, in this location, anywhere from 18 feet back to about 9.5 feet, where the property is in relationship to this seawall. And you can see the seawall itself is curvilinear, it's not straight. This is the proposed dock. We squared off the end. The applicant wanted to have this space worked out. We added a floating dock in the interior for kayaks and boards. And then we're replacing the boat lift. Locations. We are putting in a new seawall. This property is one of the older properties. Poor applicant has spent considerable amount of time and energy trying to replace this house and bring the seawall up. The backyard does flood at high tides, king tides, it's completely flooded. So we are raising the seawall cap up to 5, what you can see, so requirements. This section showing the new wall. Over looking at it, existing drawing and the proposed ruins and dimensions, kind of to show the property line dimension, what the waivers are taken off of, as well as we included the 30% with waterway. Also have dimensions of the piles from 30% exhibits. City waiver request distances are at the top left. Wood dock, 40.1 feet. Mooring pile clusters are 59.8, 57.4. So you have distance waivers 34.4. And then the floating dock is the 1.5 foot waiver request at 26.5 feet. Property line, that's pretty most of the it's in the boat lift, is an 8.3 foot waiver request, it's 30. All of those, this is shown. That for any circumstances, all the piles and structures are inside the 30% of the waterway. This section of the river is about 225 feet to 230 feet wide, and that's measured not from the property line. This is measured from the wet base to wet base. So we are inside that 30. And we are requesting this in order to safety more vessels, put it on a boat. Obviously, there's a lot of boat traffic in that river, so potential pile looking outside is necessary. Protect the vessel. Also, like I said, it has the bail lock. They were issued a violation by the city, so we do need this. We will request in order to proceed with permitting to repair that dock, make it better, get it back. Slide. These are just historical images. We did this just to kind of show what type of boats were here before. Got a sailboat at one point, some of the previous owners, and the catamaran at another time. It's been vacant for some time since. Right now, the owners are proposing, a smaller vessel that's there in the boat lift, and then the outside vessel. Once they have any money left to the house renovation, they're looking at a 60-foot boat on that outside slip. Put there as well. These are our letters of support. It's the subject site here. All 3 property owners directly west have been provided letters of support as well as around the corner. Here, the board plates are look at the struggles, events, neighbors on the street, and they were happy to provide letters of support. And these are the waivers that have been granted in the general vicinity. We're at 9.8 filings. So that's 62, and you have anywhere from 30 for the general average, as far as the general instances that waivers have been granted in this area. This is an exhibit taken on a while ago. It shows the 30% with a waterway blue, to give an idea of where the navigation section were. That'll answer any questions.
Size of the boat that's going in there.
So the boat is about 24 feet, 25 on the interior of the L, and then the outside 60.
I see by that one,
Is not, they haven't purchased the 60 yet, but they have that.
I see by that one diagram that you have over there, the last one that you had in there, I see the boats that are on the other side of the river and stuff over there. Every single one of them is touching the 30% line. And, one of them is over the 30% line. Every single one of them on that 25, thing, every single one is over that.
They're gone now.
They're
gone.
I think the
They're
ones you were
gone, but
referencing
these are all gone.
because of perpendicular on the mooring is perfectly.
It's just informed they were all gone.
There are boats there now. It's I don't know who it is, if people are off the Coral Castle and building the townhomes over there. They got the swivel people, so there are boats there. I couldn't tell you if they're the same size.
Yeah, you're referencing these, but again,
All
all of our vessels are parallel to the property now.
Is that Brinstock?
Brand's down here. Still
Yeah, but all those boats are gone. They should be gone.
Yeah, and then this is the passive piece.
So this is, as you probably can't see, they're right around the corner from Little Florida. Safe to say, a very sensitive area, so I think Tyler's taken that into consideration. The applicants have worked very hard on this. They just had the misfortune of having a property line, really, that's just an odd one that's set way back into the property. So relatively straightforward, other than totally confusing. And having seen the site, one thing I'll guarantee, you will not have any money left by the time you finish that. They're doing a beautiful home. It's a spectacular site. Any questions from the board? Anyone?
Just for a point of reference question. The existing piles, do they have a waiver associated with them?
I don't think we found any waivers.
Right.
I mean, they were very old.
They're all,
And
yeah.
the permitted.
Doesn't matter.
We have the buildings.
Yeah.
I think we developed,
There was permits, but not.
but not.
What in 2005 was a waiver required?
Oh, yeah. So it's interesting because it seems that they got the permits as they
Right,
should have, but
right.
then they were installed by a firm
Yeah.
incorrectly. Yeah. And not reported thereafter.
That's why we're here.
No one's, no. I'm curious, just for.
BK Marine District.
Anybody else? It's interesting to find errors, we see things like that. It happens all too often. Got a great team involved, great property, somebody that's making huge contributions to the town. Any further questions from anybody? How about the public? Any questions from the public? Can I have a motion from
Motion
anybody,
approved.
please? Motion from Bill Walker and a second from Barry Flanagan. Roll call vote, Mr. Cuba, please.
Yeah.
As
Barry Flanagan,
Yes.
Norbert McLaughlin,
Yes.
John Lynch,
Yes.
Jason Dunbar,
Yes.
Elizabeth George,
Yes.
Robert Washington,
Yes.
Bill Walker,
Yes.
Chair Wayne.
Yes, congratulations, guys. Great job, Simon. Thank you. Does this mean you don't come back anymore, though?
You're stuck with me.
Okay, good.
Like, I find it too interesting.
Yeah.
See, can I piggyback off this?
Yeah, please.
The possibility exists that in the upcoming months, we'll be reviewing other waiver requests on the New River. So, they may or may not have property lines that are submerged, but they will be coming to us for review.
Thank you for that good news.
I have one question. I get it on that.
Wait, go
No,
ahead,
way
Mark.
more about this.
A map like that, so with a 30% line, like
Yeah.
what? No, but the bathymetric survey is gonna be.
Well, that survey just,
The what,
Yeah,
the
that's
depth.
all that.
You're right, we don't, I think that, Bob Franks had put together something that was,
right,
was that a 25%?
I thought that's.
yeah.
I mean, something like that, we could put, it's gonna be, how many
Yeah.
slides would it be for the whole river?
5.
It's really terrific.
John and I'll talk about that.
What happened with the one that Bob Franks did was it wasn't exact. So unfortunately, when it went to the city commission as an example, they noticed the yellow line, which was supposed to indicate 25 feet, but it wasn't accurate. So that didn't help us. But we should work on this. I actually thought of getting an intern to do something like that, spend a day. I think it would be terrific information to have. So I would follow up on that. Okay, old new business. A couple things real quickly. We have the July meeting, just to confuse everybody, is not July 4th. It is Tuesday, July 9th. Take care, guys, because of the holiday. Andrew, no doubt, will send out more than one reminder, but again, it'll be the 9th, not the 4th. There is no August meeting. We're off then. Let me take a second to acknowledge some reappointments here. Excuse me, we have 4 reappointments. Ed Redpulse has been reappointed for another year. John Lynch, Robert Franks, and Brewster Knott. Thank you all for joining us and continue to contribute to this. I have one other item myself, but I'm going to throw it to anybody else before we go there. Anybody have no old new business they wish to discuss? Everybody's going to get their ass out of here and go this. Come
One
on.
of the things is that maybe I could to get the answer from it. I keep hearing property line and wet face of the seawall. Now, I said for years, few years, 4 or 5, I said I've been doing seawalls and never have we had that problem, which is always the wet face of the seawall. If it was the property line, it reverted back to the shortest distance was a seawall. These are plans, the actual plans are on there, but I hear back and forth where, oh, I got the property line, and the property line could be 5 to 10 feet out into the water is where the property line is. If you took the property line, and I think that was brought up one time, and then you want to go out for a variance or from the property line out, that would be considerably a lot further. I think Bob Dunkel one time was mentioning that the property lines and stuff back, but I don't know if you ever realized the property lines, some of the plans I looked, some of the plans, the property line is actually out into the water 5, 6 feet more. So we always had, I don't know how, when you were doing yours and stuff, we always had the wet face of the seawall is where you started to build the docks and everything, and all the plans were generated from the wet face of the seawall. And I said, I wanted to clarify that because it was brought up a couple times that the property line, and as far as I know, the property line has nothing to do with this.
So I don't think there's any real answer. All I see is ambiguity here. One of the problems we had with using the wet face of seawall is a number of properties had crumbled seawalls and they sistered a wall in there, and then you're cheating if you're doing that. So
Exactly.
I don't know the answer.
I do.
Please.
So because the code indicates distance from the property line, it will always be a measurement from the property line. If the property line is waterward, okay, it'll be measured as it was 2 meetings ago from the land property line. Because code speaks to property line.
Yeah, I've seen the property line when we looked at a set of plans.
Yeah.
I've seen the property lines where they said this was the property line on the property they got.
Yes,
And the property line was at least 5 feet, maybe 10 feet in the water.
absolutely. We had one of those 2 or 3 months ago. And I was told via legal that we should measure from the property line because the code speaks to property line. And in this case, it was the property line that was in, which resulted in a larger distance. But it's explained as it was thoroughly, and the commission hasn't reviewed that one yet, but it's explained pretty thoroughly. So because the code speaks to property line, it's all
On the other side of the coin, I said, I had to remove one time where we actually encroached 4 inches into the thing where the property line was actually back, and they went into, we were already putting it in there, and apparently the surveyor's line was what they thought was on the property line, but was the original wet face.
Yes.
One of the things was right there with Espionage, right around the corner and stuff over there. That was a major big property where the thing was 1 foot difference between the property line and wet face to the seawall. I was just trying to clarify that because I hear several things and I see several things on here, property line and wet face to the seawall and back and forth. We always said wet face of the seawall have to be it.
I want to say we used that more regularly a number of years ago with this. It seems because of some of the confusion. And Andrew said it and Bob, it's the property. It's clarified.
Yeah, it's handled differently when the property line's waterward versus when the property line's land.
Right.
So when it's waterward, it's from the property line that's landward. When the property line's landward, it is also from the property line that's landward. It's always from the property.
And the code enforcement notice?
They should know that because that's the code. The code says from the property line. So
Because we know it, but just code enforcement.
we used to handle it a little differently. You're right. We used to say when the property line was it's waterward, we would do it from the wet face.
That's where it got.
Esplanade actually gained 1 foot forward into the river and stuff over there for where their property line was as opposed to the original wet face of the seawall.
Yeah.
So they were able to move everything 1 foot forward. Well, if everybody started doing that and everything else and stuff, you're gonna reduce the size of the river itself. Just
Thank you.
just a thought.
I appreciate it. So, we were talking about Bob Dunkel. Bob Dunkel's away on vacation. I think he might be back next month. Well, we'll see, but we'll bring this up with him. We'll certainly discuss this further. Anybody else?
Just a point of clarification, old new business. Can I get a definition of what that actually, is this where you bring up something like if you see something, or is this just talking about old business?
I think it's, no, old business in the sense, is there something that we've continued a conversation on? New business, anything you want to talk about.
Okay. So I don't know if it is the right, I think it is, but does the city have an appetite for adding docks that small boaters, like even the large boaters, when they put their dinghies in the water and want to travel around our waterways? We have for example, off of Sebastian Road over on the beach, it would be a wonderful location where there's some public parking there, that you could have a dinghy dock that would be could be installed, and people from the locals could have beach access by boat. And there's almost no beach access by boat. It's staggeringly difficult if you have a boat and you want to go and spend your money at the beach. And as we all know, anybody that arrives by boat usually has a wallet on them, and they'll spend when they walk off the boat. The docks at Birch State Park were staggeringly difficult to get done, but I think Find was the one that put up the money for that.
It was PBF. It was both.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was both,
Yeah.
but those are now unusable because they're just not being maintained.
Actually, big ass boat hit the thing, broke it. State owns it, state's in for appropriation. Kill you, but they're saying the next 6 months or so, it's gonna get fixed.
Okay, well, that's good
what
news.
happens.
But
6 months from when?
So you're talking about street
Well,
ends.
maybe today.
You're talking about right of ways. And there's two things going on there. Bill would tell you that he likes to use them for water taxis periodically in the street.
This one.
But there's also the adjacent homeowners. Elizabeth, who's around it. Elizabeth would tell you that, there may be a situation with the adjacent property.
totally understand that.
So street ends like Sebastian, I think was a street. end.
Yeah.
It's something we can talk about, we can encourage, but I'm not sure how far it'll get.
There's just
Well,
no
you got
appetite for
some,
that.
this is the man that will tell us exactly what's going on. That would be you.
One of the troubles with the floating dock that's there is, one, who's gonna run it, who's gonna manage it? The other is that because of the anchoring ordinances, it's gonna be filled with cruisers that are gonna go ashore to go to the grocery store or.
Well, isn't that a good thing?
Well, it is if you don't live there. They hang their laundry, they pay their music.
They
Travis can
overflow
tell
the
you.
trash, they have all the trash and out.
So and
I
it's
live
not that
in
we're.
one of those places.
I'm just telling you that this is what comes with those types of things. We have one at George English Park, for example, that before they put that anchoring restriction zone in the middle river, people were upset. Because they're tying up close to the sea walls within 100 feet. And looking in the windows, people can see them out sunbathing on their boats or whatever. That's the cruising thing. The dinghy side of it is it becomes public for everybody.
And therefore, it's gonna attract others, and there may or may not be room for you there depending on how big the boat is.
I get that. But even like if you look at the west side of Las Olas Bridge,
Mhm.
there's where the old bridge used to exist. There's a beautiful seawall right there. It's massive. It easily could put a dock there and then people could then walk to that little park there and then go over the bridge.
Suntex now.
Yeah, or they could go, no, I don't think, it's just it's a,
No, he's on the west side.
I'm on the west
They
side of
just did
Las
the
Olas Bridge.
The redo of on the wall with.
Where the
a
mooring
couple
field
mooring
is?
balls on it.
That's our,
Mooring-
that's our spot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with
That's
the
our-
mooring balls.
But that, I obviously you probably get pushed back from Idlewild, but there's,
They're very, very
Not yet.
local.
but they're, I'm just,
It has to
I
be
wasn't
ADA
sure.
too. It would have to be ADA. So some of the street ends won't allow for the 12-to-1 slope or whatever, 14-12-to-1 slope
Ramp.
at the end of those streets because you don't have enough area unless you go way out into it with a ramp. So that's one of the challenges.
and I trust me, I completely understand the, not in my neighborhood, but when you do buy a property on the water, like for example, the Middle River Anchorage access, I was very opposed to that, that they got rid of it. Anchorages, I think, are a good thing for a community. Because it does allow the smaller boater that eventually becomes the bigger boater. It farms our future to some degree. And when you bought the property, you should have known that that was there. I get, but. So then on that, I get why adding something new that wasn't there becomes more of a problem because if you were a homeowner. But I do think that there's a value to this community by adding some public access to the beach from dinghies, from tenders.
It used to be Las Olas before that we leased it out.
Yeah, remember
Anybody
that.
could come in.
Isn't it a welcome center? That's the dock. Welcome center.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
There's gonna be some.
At the
across-
Las Olas.
Actually,
The EMR.
They're putting the building up down by, just north of the fire station, south of the EMR where the jungle point is.
So by where the old BH Cabana was.
Nah,
Yeah,
but
they
he
right-
is around the corner. This is on the.
Couple of doors down
Yeah,
from
on the
Bahia
inside.
Cabana. Towards, the Jungle Queen comes in and goes into their little corner slip. The city has a piece of property there that had 7 slips on it. It's now 4 until we get our licenses, but the water tax has taken it over and there may be a spot there.
Okay.
it's just a good idea.
But it's a big issue,
Yeah,
access.
I really think it's something that a lot of the smaller boaters would benefit to do something.
Yeah.
So,
Good idea. Anybody else? So I'm gonna take a moment before we leave, this was mentioned actually to me by a couple of you folks. And that is to acknowledge a couple folks here. We spent so much time working on moratoriums, all this craziness, et cetera. And I want to acknowledge the core of our group here, and that would be John Luscombe and Andrew Cuba. And I take the time to do this because these guys are just, we care a great deal about you. 2 of you are our friends, and that we believe our community waterfront parks, et cetera, are in better hands as a result of it. I made one mistake that I'm going to correct. So this is on behalf of the Marine Advisory Board. This is to John Luscombe, and I made a mistake. It says City of Fort Lauderdale Marine Advisory Board, thank you, John Luscombe. Recognition of 8 years. Now, I made a mistake because I found that it was actually 15 years, but it was not consecutive. So I'm going to change this and I'm going to bring it to 15 years. In recognition of 15 years of oversight, project management, administration, and support of the City of Fort Lauderdale Marine Advisory Board. John, we thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're gonna change that to 15, and this is on behalf of the board. We thank you. And this is on to this other guy, Madam Secretary down here. And this is thank you, Andrew Cuba. And I think I got this right. In recognition of 18 years of outstanding leadership, guidance, and service to the City of Fort Lauderdale Marine Advisory Board. Now, I got information from the town that said Andrew has been actively full-time since 7/10/2006. So this is almost his 18-year anniversary. And John, they completely screwed up, and it's technically a little over 8 years or 15. So we thank you both very much.
Thanks, thank you.
8 years. And with that said, does anybody want to get out of here?
No,
Yes.
let me just tell you about the survey. So the reason it hasn't been done yet is because we've been waiting to get insurance from the vendor who got it and submitted it today. He's gonna start Wednesday or Thursday next week. So That's it. So we'll see. And it's about 3 days it'll take.
Can you give me updates on the seawalls in front of the wharf?
Yes, actually, we have a design and permitting consultant that was brought on board.
Yeah.
We met, I'm gonna say 2 weeks ago there.
Yeah.
And the idea that we're looking for them to design is to not, originally they wanted to put that cantilever
Yeah.
walkway. I don't think we need it, because the price is pretty high to put a port kind of configuration there. So it's really gonna be just a seawall that would look continually like the rest of the New River with fender piling there. We're gonna put power in. We're gonna put a floating dock at each end, so there'll be a floating dock at, is it Rivertail?
Yep.
And the
By the
other
end.
end will be by the.
Under
pump
the
out
Andrews
station.
Avenue Bridge by where the.
It's gonna be where there's a straight area in front of Rivertail, there'll be
Yeah,
a floating
down by the
dock
bridge.
there and a living seawall behind it. And then on the other end down near the pump house, there'll be another floating dock there with a living seawall behind it.
That's great.
So, and they're also, we have a grant presentation. I'm not doing it. Public Works is doing it, but they're going up to find on the 22nd of June to make a pitch to get some assistance there for that project. So they're going for 3 million. The estimate on the dock is somewhere in the $9 million range. You can believe it.
Didn't they have 4.5 already?
They've had that in the kitty,
Right.
which is turning out to be a match.
Where's that kitty? Oh,
It's still there.
okay.
It's still there. The money's there.
So what are we looking at? Year and a half, 2 years?
I don't know when they're gonna have drawings. I would imagine you'll see 30% by a couple of months. And then it just keeps going, as you know. And then the construction side of it's gonna be interesting. It looks like it'll be just regular sheet piling, driven down in front, the cap tied together. And that's it. So that's where that is.
City still won't run it.
Well, there's still a Brickell license that's there, that the wharf holds. And I'm not sure where that's gonna go. It's the best I can tell you.
Anybody else?
July 9th is a Tuesday. The next meeting, on a Tuesday.
We already mentioned?
It's not on a Thursday.
Do we get a record?
I don't know. Hope she's coming soon. Barry wanted to know when the regular girls.
I'm not soon enough.
Thank you all. It's an excellent meeting. Thank you all for coming. If nobody else has any other issues, we will adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
A second, please.
Second.